the Benjamin Moore paint store. And I tell you that because right about that time, I remember reading a book called Mind as Healer, Mind as Slayer. It was written by Dr. Kenneth Pelletier, who was a UC San Francisco faculty person. But he's talking about, oh yeah, the mind can do these tremendous things to your well-being. Many of them very good, and many of them not so good. So, yeah, okay, we'll talk about that. Anything else? Mind, body?
Dreams.
Dreams, okay. I can tell you about, I don't know a lot about dreams, I can tell you about mine. And that could take 6 hours, but sure. Okay, well, if I forget to talk about dreams, you remind me, you just poke me or something and say, I thought we were going to talk about dreams. Okay, good, dreams. Anything else people want to hear about? Irritable bowel, dermatitis, chronic fatigue, yeah, things like that. Hearing is going bad. Okay. Arthritis?
Oh, sure.
Memory. Okay, I won't remember that.
Old age and death?
Old age and death. We'll talk about death. I'm good with death. Yeah. Okay. Good.
Memory and old age.
Memory and old age. Okay. Here we go. Let's see if I have this looking right. Okay, so I do give a lot of talks. I give a lot of educational talks, and you always have to do disclosures up front. I mean, the only disclosure I have is that I don't like cilantro, which is it's very awkward for a Chinese person, okay? Because Chinese like to put cilantro in everything, as do Hispanics, okay? So, and there are a lot of Chinese and Hispanics in this state, so it's been rough for me, but I've been praying about it, and I'm just going to work out. Yes? Oh, food is medicine? Oh, that's I was actually a nutrition major here at Cal. And we can talk about food. I probably should have wrote it. Why don't you just keep notes for me? Okay, great. Nutrition. Okay, so actually, let's just start off with nutrition, okay? So I see a lot of patients, and I try and give them some basic nutritional information. And so I wrote up this 5 or 6 line thing. And then my brother-in-law, Carol's husband, who has a PhD in like public health and nutrition, I had him look at it. He added one thing, but here's everything you need to know about nutrition, okay? You should shop for your own food and make your own food as much as possible, right? So most anything you make for yourself is healthier than anything you buy in a store. And my wife, who is a food science major, will tell you that what food production companies do is they manipulate salt, fat, and sugar to sell you really tasty things at an inexpensive price and things. So that's rule number 1. Rule number 2 comes from Kaiser Permanente, which is that you should eat 5 to 7 servings of fruits and vegetables every day, and you build the rest of your diet around that. That should be the fundamental part of your diet. And then around that, you can add some lean protein and some low-fat or non-fat dairy for calcium and things like that. And then some high-fiber carbohydrates. Try and stay away from simple sugars. And then what Chris Jensen advised is you should also cut out all those high fructose corn syrup sugary drinks. Does anybody here ever go to Starbucks? Okay. Now, if you go to Starbucks, I see a lot of Caucasian people lining up for some very expensive, like Frappuccino type drinks, which are full of sugar and calories and fat and all that. But all the Chinese people, they're just spending like 90 cents for a cup of coffee, but then using all the Starbucks cream and sugar and stuff. So that I'm just saying, yeah. Let me just knock out nutrition in the beginning. Yes.
But the Chinese like those tapioca drinks, aren't they? Full of sugar?
Yeah, those are Vietnamese people in the tapioca place. There are, if you actually ask them what they are, they're Vietnamese. Or they're Chinese who went through Vietnam on the way to America. So,
I know some Chinese relatives.
No, you don't. No, you don't. Okay. Don't argue with me. I'm the speaker. That's what my father used to always say to the pulpit. If somebody disagrees, oh, I'm the pastor. I have a THD or whatever. Okay, so this is pretty much everything you need to know about me. I'll step to the side so short barber here can see the picture. But I have this fancy pointer because when I go to the different Kaiser Medical Centers, I like to impress people. I'm wearing a suit and tie, and I have this thing. It's very important. Okay, so who's this young guy? That is James Chuck. Now, some people call him Jim, but those are only people that don't know him. okay? His name's James and stuff. This is my dad, looking actually kind of dapper. And actually, Barb, who owns like Sacramento's finest women's clothing store, Serendipity Boutique, she would notice a lot of things here, including that lovely tie and nice suit, and his trim figure, and tall for an Asian guy too. For reasons unclear, my lovely mother married him, and we had 4 kids, or they had 4 kids. This is my oldest sister, Becky. Here's Carol Sue, who's right here. We used to call her Butterball, because at one point I think she was a little bit heavy, okay? But look at her now, she's looking great. And this is my brother, Paul. My brother, Paul, could have ended up in prison very easily. He hung out with guys who ended up in San Quentin, but he's now somewhat employed and has a family. Actually here in Berkeley, but see that tough guy, body language right there? You know, like, I'm going to beat you up, is what he said. And then there's the chosen one, right here. That would be me. Has anybody here ever seen that movie, The Last Emperor? I hope you saw it on the big screen, because television doesn't do it justice, but I remind myself of The Last Emperor, actually, but only because my parents put this hat on me, which is I mean, what is that? I mean, that had to be from Goodwill. I'm pretty sure they didn't buy that. So, just by way of background, so we did grow up in Chinatown. Well, James, is a pastor in Chinatown. We lived kind of on the outskirts of Chinatown. Then we moved to the Sunset District, out where the homes are just side by side. There's no space between homes there. And then I went to Cal here for college, and then UCLA for medical school. But then I did my training at UC Davis in Sacramento, and I pretty much stayed in Fairfield, Sacramento area, Davis area, for my adult life. And I am a family physician with Kaiser Permanente 23 years now. And patients often say, wow, you don't look that old. But my reply is, well, I feel that old on the inside. And the other thing I tell them is that, Asians in general look young, but we don't live any longer than other people. So we're the most common comment at an Asian funeral as you walk by the casket is, wow, she looks young. So don't think that your good looks are going to make you live any longer. Statistically, we're just about the same. Okay. All right. So this was when my father asked me to speak a while ago. I put down some ideas, and this is kind of the basis of what I wanted to talk about. But we can talk about other things too. But one thing I was thinking was, rapid and unprecedented advances in science and technology, all the things you read about, in the newspaper, and all the things that your doctor talks about when you go to see him or her. Fancy gene therapy and MRI scanners and interventional radiology. A lot of these advances in technology, I would say, and this is just my perspective, I feel like it's misled many physicians and patients to focus on pills, scanners, lasers, and gene sequencing as the cure for our most pressing ills. And our most pressing ills in America are obesity, depression, heart disease, cancer, things like that. But I think that somewhere along the line, as we gathered all this information and paid a lot of money to do it, I think we somehow thought that all these fancy technology things could not only provide answers for our physical and emotional woes, but also maybe even help us conquer death. And that's why you have crazy people who, when they die, they ask that their heads be frozen and stuff like, why would you do that? You gonna make soup out of it later, or what's the deal? Although, did anybody see Sleeper with Woody Allen?
Yeah.
Is that the one where he gets rolled over by the bulldozer and then they take a cell from his nose and they recreate him? Was that Sleeper or Bananas? I can't remember, but yeah, there are thoughts that things like this could happen, and maybe they could. Hopefully not. Hopefully, I'm not wild about the cloning idea and you being reinvented over and over again. I mean, there's nothing so special about you that you should be recreated over and over again. So, all right. So these are some questions I thought we could discuss together, and I hope this feels more like a discussion than a lecture. I'm not big on lectures. I was very difficult for me in medical school. I think I had ADD or something because I got really fidgety sitting and listening to people and would often fall asleep. But I did pass my board, so don't worry. I was listening enough. But here are some questions that people might have. Okay, should Christian patients and doctors and nurses be thinking any differently about these issues than non-believers. All the things about health and life and death and all that. Like, should we have different thoughts than non-Christians? I don't know. Number 2, what role does God play in the development and treatment of your blocked coronary arteries? Like, God's a loving God, He's a fantastic God, He made you beautifully and stuff, but if He loves you so much, like, why does He let you get heart disease or cancer or things like that, right? And if you get those things, is it because God doesn't love you or you're not faithful, or is it just because it happened? And the other thing is, like, why do we even need tests? This is horrible English here. Why do we even need? Well, I wasn't a really good English student. Chinese don't do really well on the SAT in English, but we are excellent in math. I mean, I'm excellent in math. But anyway, I'll change that. Okay. And actually, some of your vision is probably so bad you can't even see this. And I see a lot of you going like this too, like you can't even hear me. So why do we even need tests, doctors, and treatments if we have prayer? I'm serious. This is not a facetious question. Sometimes as a Christian I think, like why do I even go to work every day? I mean, because I actually think that prayer is just as powerful too. What other sort of questions? The memory and food and sleep and stuff. But as I ask these questions, do you have any other questions you think about as a patient when you're seeing your doctor, or as you drive into the hospital, things you're wondering? Yes?
Medication.
Medications. What about medication? Oh, meditation. Yeah. Oh, good. Yeah, I'm glad you're asking these questions, mind, body, meditation and stuff, because we have a huge physician wellness program that we've rolled out for all the Kaiser physicians. We have 7,000 Kaiser physicians in Northern California, and knowing that doctors take care of everybody except themselves, which is bad for us, right? If your physician doesn't take care of herself, it's bad for you. Let me just tell you. So we have this comprehensive program rolling on, but as part of it, I'm going to every one of our medical centers in Northern California, giving a talk about wellness. But much of my talk about wellness is about mind, body, because I have this personal belief. Some physicians share it, not all, that 90% of your wellness is your mental health. Okay, and for Christians, it's sort of mental / spiritual health and stuff. And I think 10% of your health is just physical stuff, like what you eat, what you do, and all stuff like that. So yeah, I'm very, and I'll talk about mindfulness. And I actually have attended several. Has anybody ever attended a mindfulness course? Mindfulness. I've attended some, and I've survived, and I'm here to share it with you. But I would like to tell you that one of the things I believe about Christianity is that it has many answers for the big questions in life and stuff. But we had a seminar at our church several years ago, and I attended it, and the one I attended, because you could choose from several, was taught by a husband-wife team. A psychiatrist at the UC Davis Medical Center, and his wife was an art museum curator. So a very creative, fun couple and stuff. And one of their major points was that God speaks to us through believers and non-believers, right? So the art curator, she got up and said, oh yeah, God, she said in her opinion, this is just her opinion, that sometimes you'll be standing in front of this lovely painting in some museum in Chicago, and you just feel God's presence. But that painting was not put together by a Christian person. And she has a strong belief that God speaks through many artists and art forms to inspire us and stuff. And similarly, her husband's a psychiatrist who's the chief of the residency program at UC Davis. Most psychiatrists don't believe in God. Did you know that? I mean, psychiatrists, first of all, they're the oddest people in medicine. But most of them don't believe in God. But this particular, that's not especially funny. But you're probably thinking about something else that happened to you yesterday. But Mark Service, who's an award-winning professor at Davis, everybody loves him. He's a strong believer that God works not only through Christian physicians to help believers, but definitely works through every single person on the healthcare team. And I believe that too. So interesting stuff. Do you ever wonder about these things? Have you ever wondered about these things? Kind of interesting, huh? But you just wonder by yourself, like in the closet or in bed. And I would encourage you to reach out to other people and think and wonder about things. One thing I'll tell you is, so anyway, my point being that I've learned many things about God and Christianity through non-Christians and through non-Christian educational programs, and we'll talk about that actually that way. So there's a lot of wellness in mindfulness, and mindfulness is not Buddhism. Some people think that mindfulness is synonymous with meditation and Buddhism, but it's actually not. Mindfulness is just it's being aware of your circumstances and relationships, kind of just having thinking and then having a perspective about life and like your place in the history of the planet and time and all that stuff. Okay, so have you ever wondered like what physicians think about religion and God? Mm-hmm. Yeah, me too. Yeah, good. So like we're resonating as one here. So I will tell you that about 10 years ago, I attended a Christian physician fellowship group where we did a 10-session program called the Saline Solution. And it's a lovely title. It's kind of a play on words because saline is the word for salt. And you know, when we give you intravenous fluids, we say hang a bag of saline and stuff because that is physiologic. It tries to mimic the electrolyte content of your blood. And similarly, God, we talk about this being the salt of the earth and things. So anyway, the course is called the Saline Solution. And back then, I swear, they shared figures with us that went something along the lines of, ballpark, like 90-95% of Americans believe in God, but only like 20 to 30% of physicians, right? And I thought, wow, so I was thinking that for a long, long time. And then there's some new data that came out in 2005 and stuff, and it's a little bit different. So I'm going to go over that. So it turns out, this is 2005 data out of the University of Chicago, a research study, and it said that in the survey they did, 76% of physicians believe in God. And 59% believe in an afterlife. And as Christians, you might be thinking, oh, like why isn't that number the same? But not all people who believe in God are Christians, right? You know that. So, okay. And then physicians are more likely to attend religious services than the U.S. population in general. All right. That was kind of news to me. And once again, this is from the Journal of Internal Medicine. So Farr Curlin, who's this Chicago physician, led this study and stuff. And said that people who combine an aptitude for science, an interest in religion, and an affinity for public service are particularly attracted to medicine. And I would say that as I look around at my colleagues in medicine, the second two things are definitely true. The first and the third. Aptitude for science, you have to be basically good at science to go into medicine. If you're having trouble with 9th grade biology, or your grandchild is, or your child is, they probably shouldn't be a physician, okay? They can't figure out all that stuff about cells, just they should do something else. But the public service part is big too. A lot of physicians, many of whom are not religious at all, their life is all about helping others. And I would like to say this. One thing I've discovered during my life is that if you're a Christian and somehow you think that Christians have cornered the market on doing good, that is absolutely not true. And that's confusing for Christians, because sometimes they're raised to think that as a young person, and then they get out to the adult world, and in terms of doing good for a community, they're being outstripped by non-Christians, and they get confused about that. But I always tell my Christian friends, we have not cornered the market on doing good. But Christianity is not about deeds. James talks about it's nice to have deeds with your beliefs, but Christianity is about being saved, right? Salvation by grace. So in case you ever thought, I like this Christianity thing, but it really bugs me that I guess Mormons are kind of Christians, but the Mormons and the Buddhists are outdoing us in Berkeley in terms of feeding the homeless and stuff. That's not really the issue. So okay, and then let's see more things about doctors. 55% of physicians said their religious beliefs influence their medical practice. Now, so what this figure tells you, now you went from 76 to 55, that's telling me that for some physicians, this belief in God, it's very loose. We're not talking about committed Christians who spend a lot of their time and money focused on serving God. So it's kind of loose. So anyway, because I'm thinking if you really believe in God, it doesn't sort of influence your medical practice. It's what your medical practice is all about, right? Anyway. So, and then 90% of doctors attend religious services at least occasionally. We call those the, what's that funny thing like Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Easter? What are those Christians called? Yeah. So that's good. And then compared with 81% of adult Americans, so physicians have seen the inside of churches and stuff. And then family physicians, which I am, and pediatricians are more religious than doctors in other specialties. And then, like I said earlier, psychiatry is among the most secular of specialties, and that's why my colleague, well, the guy I go to church with, Mark Service, is such a special person. To have a Christian leading a residency training program in psychiatry at a major U.S. university is just lovely to me. But the survey shows that doctors are less religious than the population in several ways. They're less likely to try to carry their religious beliefs into all other dealings in life. And they're twice as likely to cope with a major problem without relying on God and stuff. And more doctors consider themselves spiritual but not religious than compared to the population. And the reason this is that medical training is very secular. Except in the rare places like Catholic medical centers where they do things like pray on rounds and things like that. In every other tradition, like at UCSF and Stanford and UC Davis, you're never praying on rounds or things like that, or really mentioning God in a significant way at all, because there's physicians like to think of themselves as intellectuals and very evidence-based, and some look down on any sort of spirituality as a soft science and things like that. That is changing significantly, and actually I think that Christians have the mindfulness people to thank for that, because mindfulness is kind of an iterative step or a bridge to a world of thought that includes things like meditation and prayer and stuff. Okay, let's see. Some experts say physicians don't know if it's appropriate to incorporate their faith into their practice. So I'll give you an example of this. You know how in your life you needed role models to sort of help you get to the next level? So similarly, physicians need that. And for instance, I work at Kaiser Permanente, and we're definitely a secular organization. When you sign up for health insurance at Kaiser Permanente, you're not thinking that you're going to walk into the office and that your doctor's going to try and convert you to be a Christian, right? In fact, you're probably fired for that. But my boss, Chris Palkowski, was in medical school a year ahead of me, and we're both members of the Medical Student Association, Christian Association. And here he is, the physician-in-chief, overseeing, like 1,100 of our 7,000 doctors are in Sacramento. He's overseeing this. And we were at a Bible study together, and he said, oh yeah, he goes, I put Bibles in my exam room and stuff. And I said, oh, that's really interesting. Here you are, our administrator. I said, how do you get away with that? He goes, oh, well, I never mention it to patients, but it's my signal to patients that I'm a believer and stuff. And then if they want to ask me about it, they can and stuff, right? So, or other Christians might do things like, put a cross on your lapel or something like that. And then there are at Kaiser, we have physician homepages on the internet. Like, you can type in any Kaiser physician's name and put Kaiser, and it'll take you to their physician homepage. And on my physician homepage, which is a very public page, it says, based on my Christian beliefs, my goal in life is to love God and love people. So there are different ways that Christian physicians can be more bold and stuff, but they need to see role models and stuff. So I have this question for you. Has your physician ever asked you about your spiritual beliefs?
No.
Let's have a show of hands. Anybody where your doctor said, what are your spiritual beliefs?
No.
Anything like that? Okay. And does anybody here have any idea whether or not your primary care physician, which is like an internist or a family doctor, maybe for some of you gynecologists, let's have a show of hands. Who knows what their physician's religious beliefs are? Yes. Yeah. Tell us about that.
Same church.
Oh, same church. Okay. So that's kind of a giveaway, right? Which church? Do you go to this church or a different one? Oakland Baptist. Okay. And is your physician a man or a woman? Is your physician a man?
Male.
It's a male. So in his office.
I know of him when we were both there at that time.
Oh, okay. But he's still your physician.
Yes.
When you go into his office, are there any signs or signals that he's a Christian?
No.
Okay. Has he ever prayed with you during a visit? Okay. I'll tell a little story. In my practice, I usually inquire about people's religious beliefs, right? Because I want to know. Because for many people, their religious beliefs are a great source of wellness or unwellness for them. So, and then at Kaiser we have electronic medical records, and there's this little summary page where in the lower right-hand corner I just write a social history and stuff. And I'll put what they believe or don't believe and stuff. But anyway, if I know a patient is a Christian and stuff, we'll often end the visit with a prayer. I'll say, well, can I pray for you? And they say, of course. And I've had many patients say, oh my God, physicians never prayed with me and stuff. That was fantastic, right? I've actually never had anybody say it was bad. Here's a funny story. Our chief of orthopedics in Sacramento, Tom Bigley, was a Christian, and we were talking about this in our Bible study, and he says, oh, I offer to pray with every patient before I roll them into the operating room. And he says, you know, in a 25-year career, I've never had a patient decline. Right? So, yeah, it's really interesting, and it's pretty powerful, right? I mean, you could imagine. Could you imagine? What if your physician at the end of your visit said, "Oh, can I pray with you or pray for you?" Yeah, yeah. Or what if you during a visit at the end said, "Gee, doctor, I'm wondering if you could pray with me," or something like that, right? It kind of works all different ways, right? Could I, or doctor, can I pray for you, or whatever? I think that would be powerful. I think you'd freak some of them out, okay? All right, so most physicians have not been trained to address these issues, you know, the spirituality, because they don't consider it part of their work, and they keep these areas separate in their lives and stuff. Yeah, so. Oh, second part of my question here. Do you care whether or not your physician is a Christian? No. And I see, so I don't want to pick on you, but Vivian, how come you don't care? Well, why don't you care if your physician is a Christian? It's okay. I'm not pointing you out as if that's bad. I mean, most people don't care, but. Oh, okay. Good. I speak Chinese, but I need a little translation.
I don't care whether my mechanic is a Christian or not.
Oh, okay. Okay. Oh, that's good. Okay.
She said as long as he heals me.
As long as he heals me. Okay, great. That's fantastic. Right, just give me the right drug, give me the right surgery, and yeah, okay. Because maybe some of us don't expect spiritual support from a physician because we see them as like a secular, like a technician almost. Okay, yeah, good. Okay, so Dr. Ginsburg, who's Jewish, you probably could have guessed that, said the faith and medical communities in Philadelphia are working together on a program in which medical students and physicians go into houses of worship and other locations to provide health screening and educational programs and stuff. And they're saying, he says, there is much more to a human being than what's in science. And we, like a minister, have a tremendous influence over a patient's life. I have a strong belief that physicians are only familiar with things that they've been around, okay? And if I were the king of the world, I would have medical students rotate through like mosques and temples and churches just to see where their patients are going, right? I mean, because, for instance, when you're in medical school, they, at least for my training, they sent us to AA meetings because so many of our patients are alcoholic and they go to AA. And how could you be a good physician understanding alcoholism in the AA meetings if you've never been to one, right? So similarly, if you're a physician and you're helping a patient through, you know, with their life, and a big part of their life is their faith, but you know nothing about their faith, then you're not doing a very good job, right? So that's one reason I try to study the basics of other religions. I mean, just what I can find on Google and stuff. Just because, you know, these are the things my patients believe. So I need to get interested in what they're interested in, right? So here's the religious identity of physicians. So Protestant, 38% compared to the population, 54%. Catholic, 21, 26%. Jewish, only 1.9% of the population is Jewish, but 14.1% of American physicians are Jewish. You know, if you were lived in San Francisco and LA like I have, you'd think that 90% of physicians are Jewish, and the other 10% are Chinese. Okay, So, Hindu, now see, look in these things, how people with these religious beliefs, like a disproportionately high number of them go into like medicine, right, and stuff. And that gets back to one of our earliest slides about how spiritual people oftentimes go into medicine and stuff. So, yeah, interesting. So fitting medicine and faith and stuff. So this is, I think, the last slide from that article. The influence of religion on medicine is most notable in controversies over abortion, birth control, and end-of-life care and stuff. So that's interesting, right? So sometimes in medicine, the only time religion comes up is on these procedures and things we do where religious people might have issue with and stuff. And the dissatisfaction of physicians with their own practices. Oh, and by the way, the most recent survey shows that 38% of physicians in America are burnt out. Okay, and physicians, we define burnout as being so overworked that you're out of touch with your emotions, and you kind of treat your patients as sort of things and numbers instead of people and stuff, and you're just exhausted. Okay, now. Raise your hand if you're worried that 38% of physicians are burned out. Okay? These people who are making decisions about your diagnosis and your health are working so hard that they can barely keep up. Okay? And so, and one of the reasons is because it's a very service-oriented profession, right? And it's interesting. I wouldn't say it was my number one, but one of my role models for going into medicine was my Uncle Arthur, my mom's brother. He passed away and stuff, but Uncle Arthur, was in solo practice, general practice in Fresno, California for over 40 years. And I looked at his life and I thought, God, his personal life, not very good, right? I mean, he's a nice guy, and it was fun going to barbecue at his house, but I just think he worked 7 days a week. And so I actually went into medicine thinking, this is going to be rough. In fact, I think my father just told me within the past 5 years that when my mother, who had gone to Stanford nursing school and she knew all these doctors and stuff, when she heard I wanted to be a doctor, she didn't tell me, but she thought, oh, that's a bad idea. She thought, oh, that's not going to be good for me and stuff, right? But here I am, 52, still alive, not bad, huh? But, yeah, it's kind of rough and stuff. But anyway, the dissatisfaction with their own practice suggests that something has gone wrong. And part of what has gone wrong is that they are not able to make sense for themselves how their practices are fitting into a good and faithful life, right? Because once again, if you go into medicine as a spiritual person, so much of the teaching is that you should keep that separate from your practice and stuff. But I think that's changing. As we see that spirituality and mindfulness and things like that are a big part of health.
Well, I was talking to my doctor a while back, and he keeps his practice, I wouldn't say small, but reasonably manageable so that he can really attend his patients well.
Yeah.
I think that's a key too.
Right.
That they keep it to a certain minimum.
Yes, that's a good point. Very good point.
You're a Kaiser doctor, so is there a certain time frame you have to see a patient?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah. You cannot extend your time.
I'm going to speak not only about that, but about just physicians in general, because one of my jobs as my dad, so I used to recruit physicians, Kaiser recruits nationwide, and over a 6-year period, I hired about 250 physicians, and we get about 10 applications for every opening. So I looked at about 2,500 applications during that time from all over the country, and I spoke to doctors from all across America, right? So they're telling me about what private practice is like in Florida and Louisiana, or academics in New York and stuff. And I'll tell you this, and I'll compare it to a practice that I almost joined out of residency. And I know family practice the best. I don't know the other specialties as well. But when I did a private practice elective in Vacaville, California with my sister's doctor, it was Dr. Camisa. He delivered my 2 nephews and stuff. I worked there for a month. And the doctors in private practice, we saw about 40 patients a day. Okay? We'd wake up, I'd wake up about 5:30 or 6. I'd round at 2 hospitals. I'd come to the office, maybe see about 20 in the morning, 20 in the afternoon, and then go to the hospital again, and then go home by 8 or so. So about 40 patients a day. And a lot of the doctors I interviewed from across the country in private practice, they're doing that, okay? Now, I've been at Kaiser for 23 years, and I would say the average family physician or internist, and at Kaiser we document everything. Everything's electronic. We know everything, right? So the average family doctor at Kaiser sees about 21 patients a day. And if you just do the math on that, average visits are about 20 minutes. But some visits take 10 minutes, and some visits take an hour. It just varies, right? But if you, once again, we're Chinese, so we're good at math. It's about 20 minutes a visit and stuff. So one of the difficult things, I think, for doctors, and the reason why so many doctors, young doctors, don't want to be family doctors and internists, is because it's the most work for the least pay, right? But that being said, they're still paid very well. But in the doctor pecking order, they get paid the least. And the government's all messed up because the way the government works is that they'll pay a dermatologist 10 times more for doing the same procedure as a family doctor does. It's very political and stuff. But you should all be very concerned that society works in such a way that that happens because primary care doctors provide the lion's share of medicine in America, and they're the person you see most of the time. So if you're political at all, and you're involved with that at all, you should be voting for everything that encourages the training of more primary care doctors and sort of helps them repay loans, etc., because if there are no primary care doctors in America, everything's going to fall apart. In fact, somebody that Barbara and I both know from Sacramento, Derek Fong, who is a Cal graduate, but very smart CPA, okay? Derek, who's just a businessman more than anything, he says, oh, in about 10 years or less, in America, there'll just be bidding wars. You'll be paying up the wazoo to get a primary care doctor because there won't be any left. And they'll be the hottest commodity in America. But in any event, it's a big deal. And I'm never clear about what things the public knows and what they don't. I mean, I know what I read and I know what doctors are saying, but it's never clear to me like what of that filters down to the general public.
The other thing I want to address is that I think if you put forth a lot of education for the layman people, public people, I think it will open their eyes. Because I think patients should have a choice to what they are going to receive and understand what they're going to receive.
Yeah, like what are you paying for? Because actually, if you pay for your own health insurance, many people here only have Medicare, okay? But,
that's a lot of
but in general, if your company or you're paying for health care, you're paying $1,200 a month for a family of 4 or more, right? And then people say, gee, why am I paying all that money? And how come I can't get everything I want if I'm paying $1,200 a month? So once again, it's great speaking to Asians because you know the math. Okay, so here's the way it works. The first time you have bypass surgery, which costs us about $300,000, you just wiped out all your premiums from a long time, okay? Yeah, you're not supposed to be sucking up tons of time and energy from your doctor when you're young and healthy. We're trying to save up that money so that when you need a kidney transplant or your bone marrow, transplant or whatever, so people kind of forget that that's how insurance works. Everybody pays in money over a long period so that when you have your bad thing that's really expensive, we can pay for it, right? And then the other thing about a physician's time is, I know that people come into the office and really, and not most of them, but many of them are wondering, why can't my doctor spend an hour with me? Or why can't he answer my email or phone call right away? It's because they're working their butt off all day long, right? From start to finish. From the time I wake up and I log on from home and answer 10 emails, to I see, between every patient I see, almost literally between every patient I see, I walk out of the room and a nurse comes to me and says, somebody just walked in and they want you right away. There are 2 phone calls waiting for me. There are 5 more emails. I mean, if you ever think your doctor is just goofing off, he or she is not goofing off. It is like nonstop. It is not like some of your jobs where you work hard for 2 hours and then you kind of relax for about 45 minutes or whatever. And if anybody has a relative or you're a retired doctor, they will tell you that it is nonstop work. So it is not for the faint of heart and stuff. But anyway, that's kind of some of the background stuff. Okay, so the great news, and this is kind of where I want to blend in, like, how can Christians think about life and health in a different way? I have great news for you. And I think I have it on another slide, but it turns out that life and death are part of God's plan. And I'm just going to, you've all heard this, but I'm going to read it to you because I think it's really, really important to remember this as you think about your life and your health and your death. So, in fact, I picked a lot of the scriptures that are to follow off a website that my colleagues in Sacramento, Christian colleagues who have this Bible study, we'd have all these discussions, and one time I said, we don't have a website where we can send our patients for scripture during difficult times. And so I polled all of my colleagues for their favorite scriptures that they share with patients, and I put it on the website. If you ever want to go to it, it's called it's really hard to find a unique website name, so I think it's like God is Love 5000 at blogspot.com. It's a free blog anyway. You won't remember that, but I wanted to do God is Love, I think 500 because but 5,000 was the only number available. Anyway, so a time for everything. There's a time for everything and a season for every activity under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. So I love this. It's not a bad thing to die. Okay. First of all, Christians, we believe that if we've been saved, we acknowledge God and we're saved by grace, not our deeds. That when we die, we have eternal life with God, right? The God we love. In fact, I love my mom. I think at a young age, I asked my mom because we were confused about heaven and hell, and she was talking about hell, and my mom just said, "Hell is just life without God, and heaven is like life with God, right?" So whatever. And then my father, when he was doing my uncle's internment, is that what it's called when you go out to the seminary? So he was talking about Uncle Arthur and stuff, and he said, the sad thing is not that Uncle Arthur had to die. He said, we all die. So you shouldn't be mourning the fact that you died, okay? He said, the sad thing would be if you wasted the life you had, okay? And that is not just a Christian belief. That's a total mindfulness belief too, right? In the time you have, did you make the most of it? Okay, so, all right, so a time to plant, a time to uproot, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to tear down, a time to build, a time to weep, and a time to laugh, a time to mourn, and a time to dance, right? Right? Here in Ecclesiastes, it's just talking about all, if you've lived long enough, you can relate to every single one of these things that they're saying, right? A time to scatter stones, a time to gather them, a time to embrace, and a time to refrain, a time to search, a time to give up, a time to keep, a time to throw away. It's just like the ebb and flow of life, right? It's the ebb and flow. A time to tear, a time to mend, a time to be silent, a time to speak, a time to love, a time to hate, a time of war, and a time of peace and stuff. So sometimes, we Christians, me included, say, woe is me, doesn't God understand? God must not have the breadth of thought and understanding that I do. You're crazy. God is so much greater than any, pea-sized thought you've had. It's like, sometimes, we lose scope of the magnitude of things. Once again, because you're Chinese, I know you understand this concept of the order of 10, right? There's ones, there's tens, there's 100,000. So that like 10 to the 5th, 10 to the 100th is much greater than 10 to the 5th, but God is like the greatest, biggest thing, that's ever existed. He created everything, and we're just like, tiny compared to that. Okay, so I'm a big believer in the sovereign God, the Almighty God. Early on in my life, I thought, wow, God is either sovereign or He's not. The God of the Bible is not kind of this halfway God who's kind of in control or kind of smart or kind of wise. No, God of the Bible, He's like omniscient, He's omnipresent. It's like omni everything, pretty much, okay? So omni-smart, like sometimes, the Nobel Prize winner, he's so smart, he doesn't believe in God. Well, maybe I shouldn't believe in God. God is so much smarter than Nobel Prize winners, right? They're like specks of thought compared to God's knowledge and insight and stuff. Or like, some scientist at UC San Francisco discovers this little gene that does this. Oh, big deal, she discovered something God made, like, at the beginning of time. Like, why does that make her so smart? Okay, so our sovereign God is fully aware of your aging. And sometimes when I give health talks, I say, hey, I just got to let you know that your body's only getting worse, okay, from the time you're born. And then you die, right? And there are two essential things that happen as you age. And they both lead to death, or misery, at the very least misery. One is that all of your blood vessels get smaller as you get older, right? And that's just called atherosclerosis. And if that happens enough in your brain, you have a stroke. If it happens enough in your heart, you have a heart attack. If it happens enough in your kidneys, you have kidney failure. If it happens enough to your feet, you lose your foot, right? Because blood is a source of life and oxygen and all that. So that takes up a big part of my day every day. Is that everybody walks in the room and their blood vessels are getting smaller, okay? And the second thing that happens is that, not to discourage you, I'm just telling you, in case you wonder. The second thing is that all your joints get smaller, okay? And when you're young, your joints, there's a lot of room in there. You know, the kids can do everything. And as you get older, your joints get smaller. So say, for instance, in your shoulder. As your joint space gets smaller, now when you try and comb your hair and you get your hand above the level of your shoulder, bone starts hitting bone. You can't even do it anymore, right? You got to comb your hair like this. What I often say is, you know, like a young tennis player. You know, you're a very good tennis player, right? Do you still play? No, okay. I'll tell you why she doesn't play. Because when you're young, you can go like this, and your arm goes way up, and notice that hurts me to even do that, right? Because your joints are so big. Now, as you get older, you can play tennis. You can play tennis at 75 or 80, but I guarantee you that every 75-year-old person, you know, playing tennis, they serve the ball like this. They go like this, right? They can barely get their hand above the level of their shoulder because the joint's so small. Okay. Yeah, and then the knees. Oh, here's good. I once spoke at the senior retreat for my dad's friends at FBC and stuff. And I'm used to working with a lot of obese white people, okay? So I was talking about, you know, knee arthritis and how the joint space is gone, and I said, how many of you in this room have had knee replacements? Because a lot of my patients have knee replacements, right? Not a single person in the room raised their hand. We had like 89-year-old people and stuff. Because Asians in general are not obese and not having, you know, some of the degenerative stuff other people are. But anyway, okay. So just to say, our sovereign God knows all these things that you're having. Okay, it's not a surprise to God that you have prostate cancer, that it dribbles when you pee. It's not a surprise to God that you know your knee hurts so bad that you're taking narcotics. It's not a surprise to God that you went through, you know, the menopause and you've gone crazy and stuff like that. Okay, I mean, God knows all this stuff. God. Okay, so not only so, but we also. So here's the deal. So God knows this stuff, and He knows about your suffering. But this is what He says in Romans. Not only so, but we also rejoice in our sufferings. Unlike some people who don't know what to do with suffering, because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope, right? Now, a lot of people who didn't grow up as Christians, they've never read this, and it takes them until like they're 78 to figure this out. And then they think they figured it out, you know, for the first time in the history of mankind. But God knows this stuff. And hope doesn't disappoint us, because God has poured out His love into our hearts by the Holy Spirit whom He has given us. Romans. Okay. So we're at 10:30 right now, and this might be a good place to stop. People have to go to the bathroom and stuff. Well, why don't we take a break, about 10 minutes or so, and then when you are back in your seats, we'll start again. Huh? We're going to sing some songs.
Off key.
Off key. Okay. So take a short break and then come back. We'll sing some songs off key. But you're eating into my time when you sing, okay? Go have some Danish or something. I'll need this right now. This has got to be good. You want that camera on James holding a guitar. I mean, that's the YouTube. Wasn't that great? James was in key and in rhythm, and that's good. Well, once again, I want to start off the second half of our time together by thanking you for your hospitality at this church, and I had already eaten some of everything, and then I was handed some hot chocolate and fruit, so you guys are too kind today. I need to move in here or something. Okay, so let's